Hey Nick, thank you for coming in. You just have a remarkable background of accomplishment. You do so much from an investment, innovation, media, enabling the whole continent of Africa in so many different ways. Thank you for coming in and sharing your experiences with the audience.
Thanks very much, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be talking to you again.
So maybe we should do a bit of an update first, or just spend a few minutes. Now, I know you spent like 24 years plus working in Europe, North America, and Africa. And you're the founder of Africa's largest B2B AI practitioner community. We can talk a little bit more about that, connecting people, and then the investment side and where you're going there, and businesses in the region. You're the founder of AI Expo Africa, which is the premier event. Actually, it's one of the premier events in the world, definitely in Africa as well. And you partner with AI for Good, so we can talk about what that means. And you're chair
Yeah.
and founder of the South African AI Association. So there's so many different pieces to that. So you bring a lot to the table, and you're a serial, very successful entrepreneur. So, you got your State of Africa report or AI in Africa. You got your Synapse Trade magazine. You got your LinkedIn Trade Group. You got AI TV. I mean, I mean, it's like a mosaic of everything, right? So that's what we should have in the background as a photo, your mosaic of multidimensional impact.
Yeah. Well, I've got the
Anyways,
t-shirt. Anyway.
okay, so thank you for coming in and sharing your experiences with our audience.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Look, thank you for that long list of accolades and achievements. I guess really all those things down to creating something that fills a gap that doesn't exist, as like many entrepreneurs and ecosystem builders do. So, while we created an event, I don't think of myself as an event organizer. While we created a magazine, I don't think of myself as an editor. We're just really kind of building up the ecosystem and filling the gaps where, we want to tell a positive story about the African AI ecosystem and, the hidden innovation and entrepreneurship, which is happening across the whole continent.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite remarkable. And in fact, I often say to people, a great investment target is Africa. It's such a green field of opportunity, right? And you've seen prior deployments in North America and Europe and Asia and things like that, but Africa, and I see India as well as just huge opportunities, and maybe Africa more so in some respects, right? So, and you're a catalyst for that. So let's break down some of the things you're doing, and I mentioned a little bit about it at the beginning of this chat, but you're doing and continuing to do a AI Expo Africa. You're entering what, your eighth year, and I've spoken at the event during the sort of the lockdown period where it used to be virtual. But unite what, over 1,000 regional and international thought leaders, et cetera. Can you tell me how it's evolved? How many speakers? How many people you have
Yeah.
at the event? Maybe name some of your sponsors. How you're
Yeah.
integrating
By all means.
different multi-stakeholders into it. So
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I mean, yeah, look, the events in this is our eighth year, the eighth summit. I think they say that to become an overnight success, it typically takes 10 years. So we're coming up on that time frame almost. But yeah, we started the event with 700 people in Cape Town in 2018 off the back of some research that we did in 2017. Back then the AI landscape was perhaps more seen as exciting and new. Whereas we're in the phase of real world rapid innovation that we're in right now. So even in the time that we launched the event in Cape Town with a small community, where we are now and what's changed in that time is it's been a real journey. I mean, right now we're looking at around 3,000 delegates for the show this year, around 110 exhibitors. Half of them are startups. And at the other end of the spectrum, we've got the likes of Google, the ITU coming to the event, and obviously with the ITU bringing their first AI for Good Impact Africa Summit to co-locate with us this year. So we're very happy about that. The other pillars of what we're trying to do are also around giving people a thought leadership platform. We've got 72 talks, 12 networking sessions. We're running 12 90-minute CPD workshops for 200 people per class. So, we're looking at, getting through 2,400 people getting deep dive technical thought leadership from companies like AWS, for example. Yeah, I mean, like some of the thought leaders we've had. I mean, last year we had Dr. Simon C, who's the head of R&D for the Advanced Technology Center Network at NVIDIA, gave a very interesting talk on the kind of global east, as we say, with LLMs that people now know about, like DeepSeek. So yeah, so ranging from someone like Simon right down to a two-man or two-woman brand new startup that's just emerged out of, a city in Cape Town, or someone from Tanzania or Morocco or wherever it might be. So we're very proud that we kind of have those elements to the show, because it fosters inclusion. From the business perspective, they get good value. From the startup and investor perspective, they get good value. So we're trying to create something for everyone, basically. Yeah. So it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, I mean, do you have some sort of government representatives as well within the continent who are sort of providing their perspective?
Yeah, I mean, this year we've got input from like the African Union, obviously the UN, and through the UNITU, various stakeholders coming from those agencies, a national government here in Southern Africa. Obviously, the commitment of ministers tends to, if anyone's organised an event like this, it tends to be last minute confirmation. So yeah, look, we've got this great spread of people that are attending, but the core focus for everyone that's attending is looking at how we can use AI more responsibly for business, for the consumer, for the citizen, and for the entrepreneur and investors. We should be focused on looking at these aspects of responsible AI and guiding people to the right resources and knowledge about them. So yeah, so it doesn't matter whether you're a government minister, deputy minister, or a one-man band entrepreneur. Those are the kinds of things that we're trying to get people to talk about and think about at the show.
And so you got this partnership with ITU AI for Good. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to 2019. The gentleman called Fred Werner, who was quite ahead of the curve when it came to looking at how the ITU could extend its outreach into, the rest of the world. I mean, not just sort of the global north, but also looking at the global south. Now, a lot of those plans that we talked about in 2019 kind of sort of went on hold with COVID, as we can all remember. But they made a decision last year to basically pick some key countries that they wanted to engage in, and the African region was one of them as a continent. And through those discussions and our relationship that we've had with them, they decided to choose us for their AI for Good Impact Africa Summit. We've been promoting the Innovation Factory Africa Challenge for the last 4 years, and actually one of the winners at the female pitching competition in Geneva just recently at the Global Summit was from Africa, and she went on to win the actual overall pitching competition for a female health application that was using AI. So, it's amazing that through that relationship we started in 2019, that we're actually seeing, true African innovators on the global stage coming from things like the event we run, the partnership we have with them. So we're looking forward to welcoming the team in 7 weeks' time. Probably when this video goes out, it'll be a lot less time than that. But yeah, it's an exciting partnership, and to be at the Global Summit this year, to do the official launch, to moderate some of the great content that they had there. It's a real privilege that we've got this relationship with them, and how it will evolve over time, I guess we'll see.
That's interesting. And Fred just got a promotion as well, right? So,
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
yeah, you may have seen
Doing something
that.
right.
Uh, is Doreen ever going to make it to South Africa, do you think? Or
I've been told there are some important people coming, and that she may be one of them. So yeah, I'll wait to be told who the VIPs are. But yeah, if she's able to come, and Bilal and the team, then yeah, we're going to have a great turnout, and there's going to be some great conversations for sure.
yeah, and especially because Bilal is actually African.
Yeah, well, is he originally from Tunisia? I can't quite
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, that's right. He's based on, yeah, that's his roots. So
Yeah, well, I
and
mean, and InstaDeep is a Tunisian AI company for anyone that's watching this. They start two people started with a laptop in 2016, I think it was, and they were acquired by a German biotechnology company for I think 250, no, 650 million US dollars. So some good things coming out of Tunisia.
yeah, and for the benefit of the audience, because we're on the inside, we see Bilal, but can you describe who Bilal is?
Yeah, I interviewed him well during COVID actually. We had a very similar Zoom conversation, and it's been quite influential in in supporting people like Fred in his vision to roll out things like AI for good and to focus on the importance of ITU standards around AI. So yeah, I mean for many people that take it for granted that their mobile phone works broadly seamlessly around the world, we have the ITU to thank for that, and hopefully as AI evolves, as we'll start to see some standards emerge, because I think again that forms part of that responsible AI discussion that we should be having. So I know people like Bilal and Doreen and Fred and the team, that these are the kind of conversations that they want to be having around the world, not just in Geneva.
Yeah, so Fred was sort of the operational head of AI for Good, and especially after in the last few years in particular. So that's Fred Werner. So just giving sort of, and then he's now, I believe he's head of partnerships overall for ITU. So it's his role is expanded,
Yeah,
of which AI for Good is just one part of his broader mandate. And then Bilal is the deputy, or sorry, he's the deputy director. So just to give the audience a little bit of structure, within ITU, you have directors who are kind of like the head of business units, and they are elected by the governments. And then the senior staff is the deputy director, and that's Bilal. He's the senior staff member within the ITU, within the business unit that runs, or originally actually, which founded AI for Good. So I just want to give a little bit of context with kind of throwing names around. And then Doreen is the Secretary General, so kind of the overall, uh, uh, I would say like the group CEO of the CEO. So the directors are the CEO. She's like the overall group CEO of ITU. And just a remarkable history too, a contribution within UN system. Okay, so tell me more about the South African AI Association.
yeah. Well, I've got my South African Green Association T-shirt on. Yeah, look, again, it's really evolved from my sort of I guess entrepreneurial um, focus of seeing where there's a gap or a problem and then finding a solution for it and filling it. So one of the challenges I think I observe as the ecosystem has evolved, and every country around the world is at a different stage of maturity in tackling things in broadly different ways, and there's no one size fits all. But here in South Africa, which is my adoptive country now, my home of 16 years, um, what I saw was this missing gap between the dialogue between industry and government, and national government, provincial government, and other state entities around AI and how it's going to impact everybody. So not just government, business, investors or startups, but also citizens and young people. And we're beginning to see a lot more discussion on this topic right now. So the South African AI Association, we launched just over 2 years ago. 3,500 members now. And as I say, at our core, we're trying to tell and teach and raise awareness around a story to do with responsible AI. So a lot of people, asking the question, well, what is responsible AI? So, responsible AI is about building an application that you fully understand its purpose, the data that it's trained on, its accuracy and any inherent biases, and that the application is being used for good. We're not using these applications for harm. And there's various different emerging frameworks on this that we're raising awareness about. Some are generic, some come out of different vendors, some come out of governments. So we're really at this interesting juncture of showing government and helping government understand that it's a journey we're all on together, and that we're not here to embarrass people or say, you don't know this. I don't know anyone in the world that knows everything about AI. Maybe present company excluded, Stephen, but not everybody is kind of tapped in as you and me are about what's going on in the industry on a day-to-day basis. So we can't expect ministers and government officials to even remotely know that. What we need to do is engage them in the discussion and making them aware of the challenges and opportunities and what we need to do. And that's really what we're trying to do. So on our advisory board, we've got government departments, provincial, we've got industry, NGO, investor, ecosystem builders, got African Union, for example. So by having that group of mixed up people from various different parts of commerce and industry and government, then I think we can have a fairly wholesome discussion around problems that we're looking at, things like regulation or lack of regulation, things that are to do with privacy, etc. So yeah, so it's again another journey. Again, I don't put myself down as any sort of AI expert per se, but what we're trying to do is bring all the right people together to go on this journey. And I think our next kind of focus will be young people and citizens. We've spent a lot of time obviously talking to industry, government, and investors and startups, but the biggest group of people that will be impacted are the people that are on the street and the people of citizens of every city and every country around the world. And we need to have more engagement with them. Yeah.
So,
So that's what
so
we
is the South African Artificial Intelligence Association, and is it like a government chartered association or a nonprofit or organized
Yeah,
like
we broadly run as a non-profit. So what funding we do get, which is through sponsorship and membership, that we plow that into events, outreach, etc. We're broadly independent of government. We don't have a charter or we're not directed by anyone. We're directed by ourselves. So we're trying to remain independent and impartial at the same time.
so part of your community though is you have enterprises that are part of the South African Artificial Intelligence Association. You have government entities, you have startups, investors, really a multi-stakeholder kind. Academic community would have some
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
representation there. So can you talk about what's happening on the startup side and the investment side? And maybe you can give some case studies of what you consider to be really great startups out of your region that people may not be aware of. And then on the investment side and things like that, can you give some insights?
Yeah, look, I mean, just to kind of give everyone a big picture who's tuned in to watch the video. Africa as a continent is a lot bigger than people think. It's a massive geography, and each country is 54 countries, 2,000 languages, even more dialects, and every country is at a different stage of growth and maturity. But one of the common factors across the continent is what I keep use this phrase, constraints. So the entrepreneurial ecosystem, country by country, ranges very markedly in terms of available funding for entrepreneurial endeavor. Typically, the big four countries that have the most available investment for entrepreneurism are South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, and Kenya. So they call them the big four. But if we dive into AI across the continent, and we've just updated our research, there's almost 6,000 companies across the continent with a declared specialism in AI, and 94% of them are in 20 countries. So whilst there's 54 countries on the continent, a lot of this activity broadly is constrained to a much smaller subset. Now, South Africa just happens to be number one in terms of total number, but the interesting thing when you look at the graph is we've measured it over 3 periods back from 2021 to 22, is this growth. Okay, so whilst there might not be the number that you have in Europe or North America, the growth is the key thing we've been looking at, and it's very healthy. So the ecosystem has grown by 240% in the 3 periods that we've looked at since 2021. So in just 4 years, you've seen more than a doubling of the ecosystem. So that's positive. But what you haven't seen is that kind of come along with the funding. So funding hasn't doubled. If anything, funding's got less. So you've got this constrained growing ecosystem which is operating in challenging infrastructure environment, challenging investment environment, and also a challenging support environment. So what we decided, is to focus in on specifically AI as a category, because it's a big category, and there's a lot. Even since we started looking at it, the category has changed completely with generative AI after ChatGPT and LLMs, etc. And probably in another 2.5 to 3 years' time, it's going to change again as new methodologies and frameworks come out. So it's an exciting space. I mean, to answer the second part of your question around, naming names. I mean, I mentioned InstaDeep from Tunisia, a massive success story. It started just by 2 people and a laptop, and I think this is the positive side for African entrepreneurs, is the cost of setting up a company now is literally almost zero. So there's never been a better time to try and set up a business, but you're still battling with the same constraints. So another interesting startup was a company called Zindi from South Africa. So Zindi is actually the largest emerging market data science challenge platform, other than Kaggle, which is owned, I think, now by Google. So two female founders in Cape Town came up with this idea of bringing people together on a digital platform to engage in data science and AI challenges, solving really hard problems, using data sets that come from the customers of Zindi, so governments, NGOs, etc., commercial companies. And the crowd solves the problem. They come up with the best answer. The customer gets the answer to the problem. The person that comes up with the best solution gets a cash prize, and the ecosystem benefits. So it's a fantastic, social impact based startup that's gone on now. I think they have 88,000 AI data science engineers on that platform alone, most from Africa, but now they're branching out into other emerging markets around the world. They're finding customers in North America, South America, Europe, Middle East. I just spoke to Selena, the founder, yesterday. She's flying to Dubai today. So, and they've also been a long-term partner of the ITU, helping them solve some of the challenges in their ecosystem. So it's a really good AI for good story. And I could go on, I guess, but maybe I'll stop it there. But there's two ends of the continent and the success stories, and there's a lot more that we could talk about. But yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, so can you rename and slowly the one in Tunisia? What was the name of it again?
Okay, yeah, that's InstaDeep. So the founder is CEO Karim Bouguer, and the company in South Africa was Zindi, Zindi. Founders Selena Lee and Megan Yates. So if you just go and look those up on LinkedIn, you'll find, or the internet, you'll find them quite quickly.
So can you tell a little bit more about the one in Tunisia? Like, you said they're kind of like a superstar. What are the things that they offer?
Yeah, I without sort of getting down into the nitty-gritty, I guess broadly speaking, the group were looking at the way they focused on a lot of the life sciences challenges. So things like how molecules fit together, right up to also how you can optimally pack a ISO container that goes on a ship. So they're looking at these very interesting use cases and using AI to solve those problems. And I think from the acquisition perspective, obviously the interest in the work that they were doing from a life science perspective and a medical perspective was of big interest to the company that acquired them, which was BioNTech. So one of the companies that was creating the COVID vaccine. So one of the trends that we've seen is that like InstaDeep, they choosing to solve very hard problems. So how do we create the next generation of drugs? How do molecules fit together? How can we solve diseases? How can we find cures for diseases? There are many researchers looking at these challenges, and the great thing about most of the work that we've seen on the continent, like the work that InstaDeep have done, is focused on solving real world problems. So those problems might be local to Africa, the region, the country, but they could have global application. So there is this movement here where there's less blue skies research and perhaps more focus on research that solves a real problem. And obviously these are seeds for entrepreneurial endeavors. So we see that as a kind of interesting intersection between the investor, the entrepreneur, and academia. And that's a big area I think we need to focus on at the continental level, is to how do we create this perfect triangle between academic, real world problem solving, entrepreneurs, and investors or capital. And because I see nothing but potential. It's just that, again, it's operating in a slightly suboptimal or constrained environment. So yeah, I mean, that's a good example.
Yeah, I'm just thinking there's a person from Africa. I think she made the Time AI 100, something like that. Kate Collette or some.
Yeah, Kate. Well, yeah, Kate's another entrepreneur. I think she ex-Nvidia, ex-Arm, and she went on to create a company called Amini. So they're focused on looking at how you can manage big data sets like remote sensing, and combining that with AI for positive outcomes. So yeah, again, just another example of a fantastic company that's really innovating in the region, and they're based in the region as well. That's the important thing to say.
And what was the spelling of the name of the company again?
I mean, I think Amini is Amini. Don't quote me on that. Amini. Amini. Yeah.
So again, these are really world-leading kind of companies that spinning out of Africa. So this is the kind of greenfield opportunity for Africa. But you indicated that investment actually even maybe declined. How are you going to shift that to where you get more investment into Africa?
Yeah, look, I think the overall observation for many investors is, Africa's not San Francisco, right? I think it's obvious. It's not Miami, it's not Singapore, it's not London. But whilst it lacks that kind of volume of capital and risk taking, there's no shortage of potential companies to invest in. So it's a bit of a kind of like, it's like a dichotomy, it's like a sort of, it's a challenge and opportunity at the same time. So some of the observations that we've also made over the years is that well-meaning interventions typically result in suboptimal outcomes. So, and I'm just making a very general observation here. It's not universally applicable, but a lot of agency investment, once it goes through a middleman and a entrepreneurial support organization or whatever it is, the impact is diluted because there's a high cost of running the program, and maybe some of the people managing it are too remote and they're not on the ground, and. Okay, so if we just say some of those things can often be suboptimal. And then if you look at the investor landscape, while there've been some fantastic successes, there is this perception around risk and failure, which some of it's real, but failure is a big part of entrepreneurism, right? Around the world, it's not an African thing. But then when you factor that perception on top of less infrastructure, more constraints, less capital, then these things compound, and it's like 1 + 1 = 10. So it's a much harder place to start. That said, the quality of the talent and the quality of the entrepreneurs is not lacking. It's just that they're operating in this constrained environment. So one of the things that we've started to look at is how could we improve on that? Again, going back to that kind of how can we entrepreneurially solve this problem? So, we're looking at creating Africa's first AI-only, AI-native focused accelerator and AI-focused fund. So, the project's called Alpha Capital, and it's an integrated accelerator and VC. And our aim is to look at bringing in and finding the 10 brightest minds and entrepreneurs each year for 3 years. So each cohort will have 10 entrepreneurs or 10 startups in it, and then put them through an acceleration program, which is proven and tested, and then marry that to capital at the other end of the equation. So, the reason why we're only just focusing on AI is, as I said earlier, it's a big category, and and we see that using a proven methodology. My co-founder Philip Kirikoff, he's worked with 170 odd startups, most of whom are still in business, all African, covering a range of different technologies. And we want to apply that same methodology and couple it with capital, couple it to our ecosystem where we've got thousands and thousands of government and enterprise buyers, other investors for co-investment. And we believe that will be a successful model, and run it as agile as we can. Often a lot of these things which are set up often have huge program management costs. And what we're trying to do is eliminate that and keep it to the minimum.
Yeah, and I mean, you can leverage, all the relationships within your South African AI Association as well, right? I mean, you've got an ecosystem, and you can use that as a foundational base to get more funding into the region. And I guess the opportunity too is you're not going to get outrageous valuations either, right? So.
Yeah, again, I think, because, if you look at I don't know, I use the Silicon Valley sort of San Francisco model. Yeah, that's not the game in town here. There isn't the volume of entrepreneurs, there isn't the volume of capital, and there isn't the volume of follow-on funding. So, we shouldn't think we can replicate that, and we shouldn't try and replicate that. What we need to do is create a fit for purpose acceleration and investment ecosystem that's right for African entrepreneurs, right for African AI, and make that a success. Because if you look through that at the other end of that telescope, and apply rules that exist elsewhere in the world, we're going to be building in failure from the beginning. What we need to do is create something that's right for the ecosystem that's here, and the quantum of funding that's available, and run it as agile and as lean as we can.
Yeah, but as an investor, you're going to get better deals. I guess from an investor standpoint, you're not going to get valuations that are they're beyond what the company is, right? So around the world, you see some valuations from the investment standpoint. Investor looks at that and says, how can they have that kind of valuation when, whereas you're gonna have a better opportunity to get in early at a lower valuation, which means your dollar goes further from an investor standpoint. So I'm thinking because you're still in the early stage, that's where the opportunities are from an investor, because whatever you invest, the way you decide to invest will go much further than if I invest in New York or in Berlin or London or something like that, right? In a startup, because the valuations will be more true to where things are going. Like you said, there's unbounded talent, and usually if you have unbounded talent, good IP, then it's just ensuring there's sufficient capital that they don't kind of wither because they don't have sufficient capital. So as long as you bring sufficient capital, you're going to get great valuations from an investor standpoint to get in, and then stay with it because you've got the intellectual powerhouse in Africa, and you got cohorts that will be agile and will have optimism, but will have perseverance as well, the grit aspect. And then it's just a matter of having that staying power. So I'm just thinking, kind of brainstorming, that it really presents a great opportunity. I don't have to write a $5 million check for something that really I'm only going to get this small piece of a company because the valuations are too high. You're going to get a much better
I think if you
balance, I
could
think,
get
of the
hold of
value.
an early stage $5 million check here, that would be a great deal, particularly for the entrepreneurs. But that would get you a big chunk of the company for sure. I mean, the other challenge that we have in this region is the dominant category that's attracted most investment has been fintech. Things like payments and related technologies, remittance apps, and things like that. Again, that's because of the nature of the region, 54 countries, fragmented fintech landscape, etc. Whereas we've chosen the category of AI, which is cross-cutting and also vertical. So you might be an AI-powered fintech, but what we're not saying is, we're just going after fintech companies, or we're going after health companies. We're going after the brightest minds solving the hardest problems, and that's our main criteria.
Yeah, and then you should be to scale globally as well. So Africa is the is kind of the testing ground, and you scale there, and then because it's AI and AI has such broad applications, then you can scale globally. It's like Zindi is scaled globally, right? Or Kate is, I'm not sure, I haven't been following a meeting, but maybe they're scaling globally as well, right? So, and then, it's like you get these American companies and then they start scaling beyond America, or ones out of Canada starts get. In fact, in Canada, you have to scale it beyond Canada because the market's too small. So, and so the same thing with Africa. You've got a big market there, but like you said, the infrastructure and things like that are still in growth phase. And but that's an opportunity, right? It's like China back in 2001. And look where they are today, right? Or Korea back in, maybe 1980, 1990 or something, and look where they are today. And Singapore is one of the powerhouses of the world, but at one time, a lot of the surrounding countries are actually ahead of Singapore, and then Singapore is now
Yeah.
a top tier, ranked economy. But same thing with China, right? China's number two in the world, and in fact, in other measures, they're number one. So um, I just see this huge opportunity in Africa, and you're going to provide that ability to bring the different parties together. You can create a center of excellence in South Africa. You can radiate out of there to the big four, as you mentioned, and then help some of the other economies as well. But it takes that kind of grit and hard work and perseverance. I see a lot of promise, and I know in Dubai earlier this year, I saw you and Selena at Zindi, kind of working together. And is you said Selena is in Dubai? I'm heading out for Dubai tomorrow to the WHX Tech. It's the Global Healthcare Expo. Is she going there for that as well or not? Do you know?
I'm not sure, Stephen, but yeah, I'll drop her a WhatsApp and let her know that you're going to be there. Yeah, look, I mean, you were talking about sort of putting out spokes from South Africa. I mean, essentially, we're probably going to run things fairly virtually, so it's Pan-African. But the other factor that we're also working on is that, as you rightly say, the companies within our ecosystem or within our accelerator, they need to find markets abroad. So if you're selling to the banks, well, South Africa, well, I think we have, six, seven main banks. Yeah, that's it. Then you've run out of banks. So if you're in Paris, I think France has 54 different banks. So you've got to develop these relationships on an international level. So we're collaborating with the French embassy here in South Africa and Station F in Paris. We're collaborating. We've signed an MOU with the Dubai Future Foundation and the Dubai Center of AI around trade missions, and companies there that want to come to Africa we can help them, and then companies in our ecosystem that want to get into the UAE and Middle East. So we have to develop these international relationships. And I think that's the other thing, because the category is so big and so new. Traditional business chambers and traditional missions, they don't necessarily fully understand the speed of innovation and what's happening in the ecosystem, and also how to connect up the right people with the right investors or the right customers. So yeah, we see ourselves serving a role in that. That will be a growing role in terms of what we do at the association. So yeah, it's interesting times.
Yeah, I mean, there's GITEX and GITEX Dubai. They got one in Europe, Asia. I'm not sure if they got one in Africa, but maybe that's a
Yeah, they
competitor to
actually
AI.
the one in Nigeria is happening right now. Yeah, GITEX
Oh,
Nigeria.
yeah.
They do GITEX Morocco as well. Yeah.
Okay, so you're seeing these big platforms move into Africa, and as you mentioned, it's a complex continent, and sometimes people outside of Africa think of it as one community. It's not. It's a lot of different
Guys. Yeah.
communities, like you said, over what 2,000 languages, and there's even more dialects and different economies and structures, and it's probably one of the most complex continents out there, right? So
Yeah, I
and
mean, look,
maybe it is
this
the
is
most complex
this is a
continent.
map of South Africa, and above us we've got Namibia and Botswana. To fly from here to London, it takes me almost 12 hours, and if I look out the window after 10 hours, I'm still above Africa. So, it's a big old place to fly across, north to south, east to west, and I feel, you feel these things sometimes. You don't necessarily have all the knowledge and the data to back it up, but I feel certainly as I uh, walk towards retirement that this next 25 years or 20 years for Africa will be its best years, and this opportunity ahead for everybody. Um, yeah, I think if we can unlock the constraints, then there could be some really interesting opportunities here. And the brave risk takers that are coming in, the diaspora who wants to invest back into the continent, these are the guys that are helping fund that. I think the next decade could be quite interesting.
Are you working with Kibera then? John, I think it's what, John Camara and
Yeah, John used to be part of our ecosystem. I think he's quite busy now doing. I mean, this has been the interesting thing when we first started. There were just these one or two key people. I also mentioned someone like Bayo Adekambi, who set up the data science Nigeria ecosystem, one of the most successful AI not-for-profits on the whole continent, actually, let alone Nigeria. Their ambition was to train 1 million Nigerians over 10 years in AI, and they're on their way to do that. So yeah, and I think as the ecosystem has evolved, and more so since ChatGPT came along, that the ecosystems within their own countries now have got sufficiently large that it's keeping us busy in our own country, let alone thinking about any other country. So yeah, I think John's broadly based out of Kenya. Bayo Adekambi's based out of Nigeria. The Tunisian AI ecosystem is going great. So yeah, and as are others, I think Morocco now they have quite a significant supercomputer. We've got the Cassava AI factory investment, which is happening. Google made some big commitments and investment into Ghana. So yeah, these things are happening day by day, week by week.
yeah, it's kind of remarkable again, and you're a pioneer because you were so early in all the work that you're doing. I just want to touch on some other items we haven't had a chance to talk about. Your Synapse Trade Magazine, the state of that, the State of AI in Africa report. I think I wrote or one of the forwards for the first report.
Yeah, you did. You're in it. Yeah.
And then so how that has progressed, and then your LinkedIn trade group, your AI TV, and some of the other kind of ventures that you
Yeah.
run, and then we'll close it off. Yes. So.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is the research that we've done, which form the publication that you just talked about, the State of AI in Africa report. We kind of left it for the second edition just to see how the ecosystem will evolve. We've just done the third analysis of the ecosystem. So yeah, the next edition I think will be radically different to the first one that we published in 2022, which I think was July 2022 when we published it. So it was pre-ChatGPT, pre-LLM, the whole explosion that we've seen now. So yeah, I think a lot of that big uptick in the number of companies has come from the fact that you've got a lot of people playing around with newer technologies, which are broadly free to use. So the report will be something we can carry on with. The magazine just ticks over. I think we have about 15,000 readers globally. And it's a digital magazine. There's no paywall, so anyone can read it. And we're probably going to move it to like maybe a twice yearly, more like a journal type format. I'm still sort of playing around with that at the moment. And the YouTube channel AI TV is really just aimed at content that we generate at the show and interviews that we do throughout the year, similar to this one actually. I'll put this video on AI TV as well. So yeah, I mean, they're what we call more our sort of fundamental platforms and the research that we do, and that tends to inform. We share it broadly, freely. There is a small fee for the report, but it's not Gartner pricing. So yeah, you can get hold of the original report. It's like $25, and that'll give you a very quick heads up about the ecosystem, the key players, the key communities, some of the trends. So yeah, we'll after the show in October, AI Expo Africa 2025, we'll start work on the second edition of the report.
I always get questions about, because I talk about AI and its deployment and things like that globally. And then there's always this question, the democratization, is there access? in South Africa, in the Big Four, but in other parts of Africa, because it's such a complex continent, what is the kind of the penetration of using LLMs on mobiles and things like that? Is it fairly widespread, or do you think it's 10% of the population? Like here, I would say it's probably like 80, 90%. I mean, everybody I know uses it in some fashion, right? So do you have that same kind of take up? I'm sure in some parts of Africa it's quite high, in other parts it's quite low. Um,
Yeah,
give me a
I think
sense of
it.
what's happening in Africa.
Yeah, I mean, look, if mobile penetration is quite high on the continent. As to LLM type, small language model type, edge uses of AI on mobile, I don't really have any real empirical data on that. Although Peter ING, is the Edge AI ambassador for Africa. He's actually on our advisory board, so he's probably a better person to ask that question too. But yeah, I think there's no shortage of people experimenting with LLM type technology, ChatGPT, Llama 4,
No, but
etc., etc.
how about from a consumer standpoint? Are people using GPT? I guess that's what I'm saying. Some
I,
form
I
of
think I think younger people are. I did a survey. I was at a ministerial um, gathering about skills and education, and I was on a panel, and there was I had maybe about 150 people in the room, various ages, probably skewed a little bit more towards 35 plus, if I'm honest. But I asked the question, who uses WhatsApp, right? Uh, Everybody puts their hands up. Actually, South Africa has the highest penetration of WhatsApp usage per capita than any other country on the planet, apparently. Okay, so
oh, you're
South Africa,
kidding.
big WhatsApp users, right? It's a
Okay.
good. They
I
like it
mean,
here.
there's AI embedded in WhatsApp.
But and this is the second part of the question, right? So I said, who uses Meta Llama 4 on WhatsApp? Because you have the little blue circle and it's on there, and it's kind of like Chat GPT like. And one person put their hand up,
Oh, you're
and
kidding.
guess who that person was? It was the young guy operating the camera. Only person who put. Right? So based on that very non-scientific survey that I did in that panel session, young people are the people that are playing with it, not older people. And I think that's the other one of those interesting things about Africa region. In the next 10 years, I think the statistic is it'll have the largest population of people under the age of 25.
Right.
And that AKA young people, right? And these are the guys and girls who are going to be playing around with this new technology. They'll find new ways of using it, and they'll start experimenting. And this is the one thing I love about AI. There's so many niches within the niche. So, machine learning, deep learning, large language, down, you just keep going. And, these niches are where the opportunities are. And I think young people will find the niches. And the great thing about that is they can pretty much do that sitting at home or in the library or on the phone or on a computer. And it will cost them the cost of a taxi to the Wi-Fi if they're getting it at a library, if they're lucky enough to have a phone and the Wi-Fi connection. So this whole world is opening up for people, just like the mobile phone and mobile money opened up a lot of commerce here on the continent. The mobile phone will be a window in on this new technology paradigm, and it'll be young people that are playing with it. So I think the people that didn't put their hand up in that panel session, if you're going to look for answers to problems, go and talk to young people.
So this is the last two questions. So Nick, we spanned a lot of parts to this. We talked about your impact in the continent AI Expo. We talked about the South African AI Association. We talked about commerce and startups and investment and where that's going. You got this accelerator, almost sounds like a venture studio. And for those who invest, it's a great opportunity, right? Because you could take a piece of each one, you could take a piece of the ones that exit out of those and go on. So it's like a portfolio investment. It's like a fund of funds investment for those who want to invest, because it's like you're investing in a cohort,
Yeah,
a
and we're
continued
and we're
cohort,
always happy
right?
to talk to investors. the idea with our model is that there's no fat in there. Myself and my co-founder Philip are, we're lucky enough that we've been able to get to our own entrepreneurial sort of endeavors and make a success of them that we're not looking to take out. We're looking to put in. So I think, from an investor perspective, if there are people that are interested, yeah, get in contact. But yeah, that's a very interesting observation, Stephen.
Yeah, and then Africa, like you said, the youngest population in the planet, right? And it's going to continue for a while. I mean, India is another. There's probably two main centers of youth, right? India and Africa, which means that that's the future of investment, it's the future of innovation, things like that. So it's a lot of opportunity. So I guess the kind of the two remaining questions, because we talked about Synapse and the State of Africa report and your kind of AI TV together with AI for Good and AI Expo and your South African AI Association and some of the startups and what's happening in the complex scenario of the continent of Africa, but also in South Africa. And you mentioned Nigeria and Kenya and things like that. What sort of recommendations you want to leave the audience or takeaways, and I guess, and if you want to, what kind of questions you want to leave the audience as well?
Yeah, well, that's quite a fundamental question to end on. Thanks for that, Stephen. Don't believe what you see on TV. Right? Most of what you hear about the region broadly is negative. Okay, there's a narrative about the region that is broadly negative. Catastrophe, disease, problems, corruption, etc. I think those are challenges and problems that exist the whole world over, not just Africa region. But it's the story that tends to make the news. So don't believe what you see on TV would be the first thing if you're an investor or someone who wants to come to the region and explore it. Secondly is, connect with people. When I started out in software, 30 years ago, the rep that looked after Africa flew down to a nice hotel in Cape Town for some meetings and then flew back, and that was Africa done, right? It's not like that. It's not like that anymore, right?
Right.
If you're investing in Lagos or Nigeria, you've got to go to Lagos, right? If you're investing in Morocco and Rabat, and then you better get on a plane and get to Rabat. And same for South Africa or Kenya or any other country. You've got to be on the ground. You've got to engage with the entrepreneurs and understand the very nature of the problem that you might be wanting to invest in or explore. The great thing about the region is obviously if you're a global tech company or a tech company that's yet to explore the region, finding a partner and a reseller, that typical channel market is pretty vibrant. And again, that's an area where we can help and connect people up to the right resellers, the right partners, so you can expand your business into the region. And then, yeah, I think Karim Beguer summed it up very well when he was at the G7 summit in Rome as an invited guest to talk about AI as a prelude to the launch of the UNDP AI Hub for Sustainable Development. The critical success factor for making things work in this region is collaboration. And we have to collaborate. Whether we're collaborating between industry, academia, and investors locally, or you're looking at, wanting to make impact at the sort of continental level, you're not going to do it on your own. And you've got to find the right partners, and you've got to collaborate. So particularly around things like the new AI factories that are being created here, giving people access to compute, getting their models trained, making that as cost efficient as possible. That's going to involve collaboration and also connecting into those right ecosystems. The category is huge. It can take you a long time to navigate your way through if you're trying to do it on your own. Let us help you. That's what we're here for. And yeah, come here and pay us a visit. Although I'm based in the Western Cape and with the capital of Cape Town, Johannesburg is well, to tell you how far Johannesburg is away from Cape Town, it's 1,600-kilometer drive, and that's before you even get to the East Coast, where you've got someone like Durban, which has a tropical climate. So it's the Indian Ocean on the other side. So even South Africa as a country is quite large. And so if you do want to come here, get in contact. We're very happy to welcome you to our ecosystem and help you navigate it and understand the opportunities that are here.
So Nick, thank you for coming in. I mean, you are such an icon and pioneer within the African context, working with your colleagues, and you're starting all these great initiatives, and you definitely are a hub for you personally, and then what all the things you're doing are a hub as well. So thank you for sharing all of your insights and wisdom with my audience.
Thank you very much, Stephen. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.